I feel like if we got anything out of the Volkanovski versus Max Holloway rematch, it's that it illustrates all the problems that there are with the 10-9 must scoring system. I don't necessarily blame the judges for what happened. I think you could have given the fight to Volkanovski using the scoring system, but I think it's time we look at the scoring system and realize this just isn't a very good one. And if you look at, this is the global scorecard that was used online, and you look at how much Max won the first couple rounds by, and then you see by the slimmest of margins, Volkanovski slips by round 4 and then does win round 5 fairly convincingly. But it just shows every problem that there is with the system, and it's really just that there is more of an emphasis on winning the close rounds, and it doesn't really matter if you lose big, and that's kind of the whole problem with the system, which is Max Holloway clearly won rounds 1 and 2. There's no debate about it, and Volkanovski barely won round 3 if he did, barely won round 4 if he did, and probably won round 5. But as a result, despite the fact that Max Holloway clearly was the better fighter for 2 rounds and did far more to differentiate himself as the better fighter from Alexander Volkanovski, compared to what Volkanovski did in the next 3 rounds, Volkanovski wins because of how the system works. And I think this is how we have to look at it and realize that we really do have to change the system, because it's not really the judge's fault. Because like I said, you can make a convincing argument that Volkanovski won round 3. You can make a case he won round 4, and he probably did win round 5. And because of that, it's not really the judge's fault, but it's more so the criteria that they're judging. And I've talked about, I mean, my real thing that I'd like to put in is I think you need to have more 10-8s. I think a 10-8 should be if a fighter definitively wins a round. So a 10-9 is more of a questionable round. If it's like you believe it could go either way, but you're going to give it to one guy, you do a 10-9. But a 10-8 is if a guy clearly wins. So if there's really not much doubt who won the round, even if it's not just a super dominant, because we really only see 10-8 rounds if it is an absolute massacre. Like, you do not see any 10-8s. Like, you didn't see any 10-8s even in the fight between Usman and Masvidal, when Usman clearly won those rounds. You want to see, like, I think if we scored it like that, and you give Max Holloway a 10-8 for round 1, which he clearly won, give him a 10-8 for round 2, which he clearly won, and then do a 10, then you give Volkanovski, let's say you do give him those next 3 rounds, and it's a 10-9, Holloway still wins, and I think that's important because he did more damage in those 2 rounds. He did more to differentiate himself in those 2 rounds. And I think we really have to look at this system, because the thing is, people talk about more judges, but the judges don't change the system. And that's why a lot of the times when people are mad about how fights are scored, it's more so that if one fighter will clearly win, and this, I think you see this problem a lot more in 3-round fights, to be honest, where you'll see one fighter clearly win like the 3rd round, but rounds 1 and 2 are a toss-up, and they'll go to the other guy. And the only way you can really fix that is, I think, to really change how you score these fights in terms of using more 10-8s. I wouldn't be mad if you see 10-7s for absolute beatdowns in rounds, just because there should be more of an emphasis on domination, and there's not. It's become much more of a focus on point fighting, and I think it's boring for the fan, and I think it's just unfair to the fighters. And, like I said, I'm not mad at Volkanovski. I think he's getting a little bit too much hate. I think he's a good guy, and I think it was a great fight. But I think this fight really shows us the problems that there are with the current scoring system.